a Western European alliance is drawn up called
NATO.
NATO.
Oh, let's go.
ANZUS. What other ones do I remember from year 10? So, yeah, basically we have the formation of NATO. No, that's really good. NATO. It feels wrong.
NATO.
NATO.
NATO sounds like your mate called Nate.
Yeah.
A nickname. NATO.
So we got NATO.
Which
and
stands for...
North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Okay.
I could have...
Treaty Organization.
What's an organization of... put it this way. So it's collective security. So if you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us is kind of the MO there. So it's an organization of treaties rather than just having a country organized Latvia. Oh, so
It's not an...
France. Backs.
It's not like a organization company.
What?
It's not like it's not like how you would describe a company as an organization.
Yeah.
It's like more just an organized agreement.
It's a folder. Rather than having to create lots of separate files, you just have a folder.
Yeah.
And that folder is the organization of treaties between different countries.
Yeah.
And it's just like an assumed treaty that if you mess with someone from NATO and you're in NATO, you have to go and help your buddies that's been messed with. So America has kind of got their tentacles all over Western Europe. The Soviet Union doesn't like this very much. And we're seeing some friction start to develop after World War II. But in terms of how the cookie has crumbled in Europe following World War II, there's not much European action so far. So far, it's largely been American action. And realistically, when it comes to the Soviet Union, half their country isn't even in Europe either. So it's very much non-European influences that are influencing the landscape of both Western and Eastern Europe. So the EU, which is not yet to be formed, but just Europe more broadly, needs to have some initiatives of their own and have some of their own policies. Like, we really needed Top Gear Australia when the...
Have you seen that?
Which one? There's two.
Oh, the most recent one.
No, I
that
saw...
I've been getting a lot of ads for
Oh, really?
on Facebook.
Nah, I only watched the original.
Yeah, okay.
They did like the Top Gear...
Who was on the original?
I couldn't tell you one of them. They did the Top Gear Ashes. That was pretty hard to watch.
Yeah, okay.
Because I know like America did Fifth Gear.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like just
It's a bit lame. Like, just the name sound like...
Yeah, make sure can I copy your homework? Like it's just So Europe needed to do their own stuff and have their own initiatives. So we had another organization.
Okay.
The Organization of European Economic Cooperation. Which stands for the OEEC. No, that's the opposite way around. OEEC stands for the Organization of European Economic Cooperation. Does that sound like another economic institution that you might have heard of before?
The OECD.
Yes. So this is the grandfather of the OECD.
Oh, very good.
So basically what happens is Australia goes, hey, can I join? Like, well, kind of messing with the title here. This is supposed to be a European thing. Like, oh, please. And they eventually let Australia in. Like, well, we can't call it Europe now. And Australia just kind of puts their feet up. Like, yeah, sorry about that, guys. So then it becomes the OECD. So it's got its ancestry in Europe trying to do their own things after the end of World War II. And basically, this was an agreement to try and limit tariffs as much as possible and to have consistent economic conditions across European countries so that they could trade with each other and try and pull themselves out of this slump in the economy that they've had following World War II. But even before World War II ended, we had another agreement, so to speak. We call this Benelux.
Oh.
Belgium, Netherlands, and...
Luxembourg.
And
Wait, is that not Benelux?
But it's like if you read it like it's a French name, it looks like Benelux.
Benelux.
Yeah, Benelux. So basically, we have an agreement between those three to completely not tariff each other and have maximum economic cooperation. Yep. Now, this was before the end of World War II, and this was basically again another part of the plan to try and pull themselves out of the rubble following Hitler devastating those countries. We then have some other guys that join.
Join Benelux or OEC?
Benelux. France and Belgium join. And so now it's a bit of a party.
I thought Belgium were the leaders.
What did I say? I say France and Belgium.
Yeah.
France and Britain, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, good to know paying attention.
Thank you.
Right now.
Belgium have joined their own organization.
So basically, what happens from here is France and Britain join the Benelux countries.
Yep.
And in terms of moving forward, they then form in 1948 the European Council. Now, this might sound like the origins of the EU, but it's not really. It's basically just an opt-in system where each country will make recommendations for each other in terms of...
I like it.
So,
I think you should do all good if not, all good. No worries if you don't want.
So you've introduced to us 4 groups, I think, now, Cam. Like, what are they? What's their? Do they meet monthly? Is it? Do they ever meet all together?
yeah, so kind of a lot of it was done by mail correspondence, but realistically, they would have the council meetings. You're probably talking annually at this rate.
Summits.
Yeah, summits. Exactly. Like, think of like the G7.
Okay.
So
G8.
I could the temptation to go
G6.
I can't believe you went over on
Yeah,
now
Like a G6.
The European Council meets and it's just purely non-binary and it's nothing.
Non-binary.
It's
He's used that term before.
non-binding.
Yeah.
Purely non-binary.
I was like, wow, that's awfully progressive.
Like, does that mean
50s?
something that I don't know?
Non-binding.
Yeah,
So it's just
non-binding.
purely like, yep. Again, exactly as you said before, all good if not, but if possibly perhaps, even the off chance that it might work, maybe you could just drop the tariff here. And we kind of fast forward into the 50s. And again, America is continuing to exert its control over Europe. And by this point, a lot of people in France are getting pretty paranoid that America is going to entirely dictate Europe. And also a lot of people are pretty paranoid about Britain dictating Europe, which is ironic thinking through post-2016. But a lot of people in France are very concerned that, hey, Britain is just going to run the show here. So we need to actually start forging some partnerships that are independent of Britain. We've got to remember at this point, there's no strong European nations. France probably is the strongest because Germany's split in half by now. We've got West and East Germany. So what the French do is like, okay, we're in a bit of a pickle here. How do we get ourselves out? What's our primary way of generating wealth? Well, it's coal and steel production. As, again, this is still a manufacturer's world. Again, commercialism's taking off, but certainly that hasn't come to dictate the bulk of Western economies by this point. So they're like, okay, we really need to focus on coal and steel production. And if we could form some sort of alliance and some sort of, I guess, organization around how we produce our coal and our steel, we could make deals with West Germany where we say we won't tariff each other when we purchase each other's coal and purchase each other's steel. We can transfer our workers between our nations very easily without them needing visas, particularly because the borders are so close, just stuck across the border as we did when we went from France to Germany when we were there.
We did do that.
Yep.
From Paris to Dortmund.
Now, at the Borussia Dortmund game, I had to squeeze past. So Jadon Sancho had just gone through and had just scored a goal. I think they scored 2 goals in like the opening 9 minutes. I think Rafael Guerrero and Jadon Sancho had just scored goals, if I remember correctly, against Colm. Now, I had to squeeze past about 15 people obstructing their view as Jadon Sancho was going pretty close again. Somehow, intellectually, I felt more at peace with them thinking I was an obnoxious Frenchman than an obnoxious English-speaking tourist. So as I squeezed past, I just said, pardon, pardon, pardon. The Germany-France rivalry is probably like, England would view their greatest rivals as Germany, but Germany views their greatest rivals as the Dutch and as the French. I don't know what sorry is in Dutch, so I'm going to have to go with pardon here.
Yeah. How do you think that went for you?
Well, no one said any rude comments, so I don't know, maybe they're quite endeared towards the French. I just felt that made me feel way more at peace. Because I had to sit next to the guys, I had to sit next to them for 90 more minutes solo, because we largely split up. Well, we were entirely split up at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just felt more comfortable doing that.
I remember, I think I got there in time. I think I was standing above my seat as the goal went in. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember. But I also remember looking at my seat and being like, it's seat number 38. And then looking down at seat number 1, just I had to go across 37 seats.
And there wasn't a second entry point to get in from the other way.
There was no entry to the other point. I had to go right to the end. And then next to me was like a divider wall.
And for all we talk about, there's a lot of comment about German efficiency, right? That the German trains run on time. No.
I think that's a pretty... That's
German
a known...
turnstiles don't run on time.
Getting into the stadium,
Yeah.
like, no, and even the German trains were late because...
Well, I thought that was a known thing. I thought that German trains were, what's the word? Commonly...
Inefficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. But a lot, like, people talk about German efficiency and...
Oh, yeah.
Then...
Except for the trains.
The argument for dictatorship is at least the trains run on time. That was often apparent. Anyway.
I see.
The turnstiles getting into the game took forever. We were quite conscientious. We got there on time. Borussia Dortmund, it took... The reason why we were late...
We could have been a little earlier,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I don't think it's entirely...
We had a late dinner. We misjudged the walk to the stadium.
And returning from the Bayer Leverkusen game, I remember visibly that the trains were late. Because that's where we found out Kobe died while we were waiting for our overdue train. So
That is true.
Like that is my association with finding out that news, was that we were waiting for a German train that wasn't on time. So from anecdotal experience, can certainly vouch for the fact that German trains were not that on time. But also, to come full circle, come back to where I was going before.
Should we talk about Cotton Eye Joe?
Yeah. That's where my head went as well. It's like, you're whinging about trains not being on time, but at least they have intoxicated Germans singing Cotton Eye Joe. Like,
Yeah,
come on.
Much more pleasant than intoxicated English football fans. I'll say that much. So anyway, the French and the Germans had a lot of cooperation with each other, and basically the coal and steel community was what was set up. Then they actually invited some other countries in as well. So you had the invitation extended to Belgium, to the Netherlands, to Luxembourg, and those guys joined in the community. And they called themselves the European Coal and Steel Community. Now, a lot of Europeans want to get in on that clique.
It does sound like a cool group to be a part of, the coal and steel community.
Especially when the results were coming in pretty handy. France's coal production increased by 50% in a 5-year period. So West Germany, I think theirs went up by 90% in a 5-year period.
Wow.
So a lot of European countries, like particularly your southern European countries, are looking at that being like, oh, it's quite tasty. Wouldn't mind.
Piece of that pie.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, guys.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, we'll invite someone else. Who are we going to invite? We don't want the southern Europeans because they just eat tapas and like have siestas. So we don't want them. No, I'm not exaggerating. That is entirely the northern European attitude towards like that. There is so much friction in the EU right now because the northern European countries think they're carrying the EU, and they basically look at Spain and Greece and to some extent Portugal as well, and they're like, you just sunbake, play tennis, and eat tapas. You are holding this union back.
Yeah, wow.
Anyway, so they invite someone. And they invite Britain. Like, come join us. Looking at the results, you think it'd be a pretty sweet deal for Britain. Britain were like, at first, Britain said, nah, we're good. We have been huge coal producers throughout history. That has helped put us in the position that we are now as not the dominant power anymore, but in recent history being the dominant power in the world. We want to retain the right to tariff other countries' coal. And we want to retain the right to try and make our coal industry as competitive as possible and create the best conditions for our coal industry rather than focus on what's in the greater good of European countries and on just sharing the wealth more broadly. So they get quite cagey and quite protectionist over their coal. Mm-hmm. So Britain decline and they decide not to join the coal community. It gets a little bit more interesting. So we now have nuclear warfare and we have the European Atomic Agency set up, or European Atomic Community, so to speak. Now that is one where you're like, oh, the atomic community.
Yeah, the steel and coal community. Oh, it's looking a little less interesting now than the atomic communities here.
It really feels like, like I imagine this is how it felt for the guys that made Pokemon when they had to keep making cooler and cooler like Pokemon trainers or Pokemon. Like originally Charizard was supposed to be the coolest Pokemon, but then you had to have like Mew, then you have Mewtwo, and then you just got to keep like leveling up Rayquaza. Yeah. It really feels like they're trying to one up. So basically similar agreement, but that was around universally enforceable standards about how you make your nuclear energy. So that because again, there's common interest there. If you're West German, you do not want the French being a bit haphazard about how they do their nuclear energy. You don't want it spilling over into your country either. So that was basically another institution. It wasn't anywhere near as popular as the coal and steel community or the one that I'm about to mention, but there was a little community there for atomic energy. But then there was the third one. And Britain and West Germany, they looked at it and they go, well, you know what? It worked so well for coal and steel. Why are we just limiting this to coal and steel? Let's expand it to the entire economy. And so they signed something called the Treaty of Rome, which started something called the European Economic Community. I don't know if it's quite as cool as atomic, but...
Yeah, different.
Yeah.
Different people, different drinks. You know,
Again, the jocks are gone now. Now you really want to try and get the nerds on board. You get... this will be really economic. So
maybe it's the opposite way, actually. Maybe the jocks would be interested in, like the finance bros, I think, in the economic community. The nerds are like, atomic energy, that's exciting.
So, Italy is part of the gang as well. So now the gang's getting really cool. Now, post Mussolini, the main thing that Italy struggles with, and this really lasts pretty much up until today, is the mafia in Italy. Separate can of worms, we'll come back to it. But Italy's part of the gang.
That sounds more interesting than...
You don't want to talk about the economic community.
Carry on.
Jake, you can have
Carry
your
on.
dessert later.
Yeah.
You've got to eat your veggies.